नमस्कार. रसिक वाचकच्या 127व्या सत्रात आपलं सर्वांचं स्वागत आहे. आज आपल्या समवेत आहेत कोइंबतूरवरून श्री अब्राहम झकेरिया. खूप वेगळं पुस्तक ते आज आपल्या बरोबर घेऊन आलेले आहेत, द लिटिल प्रिन्स. आणि त्यांची कारकीर्द पण खूप ऐकण्यासारखी आहे. अब्राहम झकेरिया हे एक प्रोफेशनल ज्यांनी वेगवेगळ्या क्षेत्रात experience घेतलेला आहे. He had a wide range of experience spanning a career of over 4 decades, working in 7 different companies. Out of these, 3 decades with JK Files Raymond. And I had very fond memories of JK Files because I had done some professional work with them, Chiprun plant and Gadkopoli, that is Chiprun, and Ratnagiri, and also the Indore plant, I think, in the 2012-13, that period. So I had very fond memories of JK Files, Raymond, of Kunju Thakur Desai, and all these people. So really, I am happy to connect with you. Now he has experience in the Indonesian factory for 15 years. He has widely traveled to more than 35 countries. Mr. Abraham Zakaria has a work experience which have multiple disciplines like projects, production, development, quality assurance, environment control, and sales and marketing, among others. He is visiting lecturer, or he was, he will confirm, for University of Surabaya, Indonesia, and faculty for management training with Indore Management Association, India. He has interest in reading, meeting people, photography, visiting places, enjoying new experiences, languages. I like this word, enjoying new experiences. He is happily married with Marina, who is retired teacher, and daughter Tanita, who is an educational consultant, and son Vinith, who is policy management consultant. And the Little Prince, हे पुस्तक जे ते आता बोलणार, त्या विषयावर बोलणार आहे ते, इट इज रिटन अँड इलुस्ट्रेटेड बाय अँटॉन डे सेंट एक्सुपेरी. माझ्या काय प्रोनाउन्सिएशन चुकलं असेल तर तुम्ही ते सुधारा, मिस्टर अब्राहम. द पुस्तक पहिल्यांदा प्रकाशित झालं 1943 साली, आणि त्याचे 50 कोटीहून कॉपीज विकल्या गेल्या. होल्ड युअर ब्रेथ. More than 500 million copies sold, which is very astonishing, out of world, beyond imagination, beyond thought process. It is translated into more than 500 languages. Even in the widest of my dreams, I dream of writing a book. I'm making it public now. I dream of writing a book and having it translated into 34 languages. And here it is a book being translated into 500 languages. It's beyond comprehension. It has only 90 pages, 90, including illustration, which is almost 30% illustration. It was initially received as a children's book, but soon became a classic due to the depth of the philosophical value. Great. So here we welcome Mr. Abraham, and we really look forward to the presentation. All is yours now.
Thank you very much. Good evening to all of you. I am able to understand Marathi, speak a little, but I will be more comfortable expressing in English. So I'm switching over to English. Okay. I'll also using PowerPoint presentation because there's a lot of text and the illustration, which is very rich. So PowerPoint can do some justice to that. So like in the introduction, what was mentioned, now it is also interesting that this book is in Marathi. It is known as Nanna Rajkumar. So yeah, so some fun facts. It's among the top 3 actually. I'm being very safe on this because I do not want any misrepresentation. And it was originally written in French as the Le Petit Prince. And like it was said that it was considered to be a children's book with the illustrations. If you see that, you will see that it looks like a children's book. And now the latest figure is that it is translated into more than 670 languages and 5,000 dialects. And then, so this is the data on the 600th translation was in 2024. in a language of Panama and Colombia. And the original, the illustrations are by the author himself, and the originals are displayed in Morgan Library and Museum, New York. Now, interesting thing is that he himself was a pilot, and he had crashed in the Sahara Desert, which is mechanic, and he survived. After that, only he wrote this book. So the story also talks about an aviator who crashes into the Sahara, and that is where the story starts. Now, he is first making the assumptions clear about, he is making a big differentiation between children and adults. I'm using the word childlike, not childish, because those are two different things. Now, one, he talks about the snake which swallows the prey whole, without chewing it. And he had read that as a small child, he had read about that in the Nature magazine. But so he then started making illustrations, and he uses a drawing to test the understanding, to differentiate between adults and children. So this is a picture which he shows to people, and I ask them to identify what it is. So most of the adults, I say, and he also asked them the question, are you not afraid of this? So the adults usually reply as a frightened. Why should be anyone be frightened by a hat? But when he shows that to children, it comes out that it is actually an elephant which has been swallowed by a boa constrictor. But then this is only the children who can understand, not the adults. So that's where he's starting his assumptions. Okay. Now, basically, 1 minute. Uh, so this is the story of a pilot who has crash landed in the desert. And while he is coming out of the shock, he finds that the next morning, rather, he finds a small voice, and a small boy comes and asks him to draw me a sheep. Now, this guy actually starts making different kind of sheep. Every time the boy is unhappy with it, says, "Oh, it has got horns. Sheep do not like horns. Some sheep is very thin, some is very fat, some is very old." Things like. Finally, he gets frustrated and he just makes a box, and he says that your sheep you asked for is inside. And the boy replies, "This is exactly the way I wanted." So the thing that is so good about the box you have given me is that at night the sheep can use it as his house. And mind you, all these illustrations are originally done by him. I'm using that from the book. Now, so this actually I have picked up few things only because of the time constraint. We can't read through the book fully. So basically, there is a dialogue between the boy and the pilot. The aviator is wanting to understand who this boy is, what is he, where is he coming from. So he's asking. He asks a lot of questions. Finally, the prince asks him, "Oh, how?" Because he talks about how the plane crashed, and then how they are stuck here. It requires a lot of repair. So his first question is, "You dropped down from the sky." Then, so the boy is being asked, "So you too come from the sky. Which is your planet?" Now here it's very philosophical. It's talking about people with their mindsets are all in different planets. Okay. Now going into the some part of the dialogue is that uh, the the pilot is telling him that because he wants the sheep to be secure. So he says, "If you are good, I will give you a string too, so that you can tie him during the day, and a post to tie him to." But then the boy is very upset. But says, "But if you do." if you don't tie him, I said he will wander off somewhere and get lost. But the boy is very upset. Where do you think he would go? So the pilot says, anywhere, straight ahead of him. So the boy says, that doesn't matter. Where I live, everything is so small. Now, here is a very profound statement. It says, straight ahead of him, nobody can go very far. I will not go into the interpretations, my interpretations of these things, because everybody who reads should should have their own understanding. If required, at some other time, we could have a session where I will also get some understanding from other people's interpretation. The other chapter is about the how the appearances make a difference. Now, there was a Turkish astronomer. So here the background is that the context is that the boy says that he is from asteroid B612. Now, so the story is that a Turkish astronomer had presented about that asteroid to the International Astronomical Congress. And he had done it with great data, and it was a very good presentation. But he was in a Turkish costume, so nobody would believe his claim. Later, the dictator of Turkey, he made a law that all his subjects should change to European costume. So, so the original presentation was in 1909, and in 1920, the astronomer gives this demonstration all over again, dressed with impressive style and elegance. And this time, everybody accepted his report. So this is where people go for outward appearances more than what is the matter. Now, another distinction he brings in about the adults and the children are that so the prince is talking about friends. He has got a lot of friends, but he says when children talk about their friends, they say, "I know I met a new friend today." So their usual questions are, "What does his voice sound like? What games does he love best? Does he collect butterflies?" But then the adults, on the other hand, are curious to know how old is he? How many brothers has he? How much does he weigh? How much money does his father make? So only from these figures do they think they have learned anything about him. So grown-ups are crazy about numbers and figures. That's what is being brought in. Now, I'm focusing a little on this is out of the book, but the baobab tree is mentioned here. I'm putting it into context. Now, this tree is called as a tree of life because all its parts are useful, and in a desert, this is a life-giving tree. It looks upside down. What you see on the top are not its root, but its stems and leaves. And they are found to live for about 3,000 years. And they have been around for at least 21 million years. And these trees are really huge, 30 feet wide trunks. And they hold a lot of water. And elephants eat their bark, and a lot of animals and the birds sit on them. Now, how it is important is that it is very, very long lasting. Now, here is where the baobab tree is brought in into the story. The other one was my extra this thing information. Now, it says now there were some terrible seeds on the planet that was the home of the little prince, and these were the seeds of the baobab. Soil of that planet was infested with them. A baobab is something you will never be able to get rid of. Now, this is very significant. If you attend to it late, it spreads over the entire planet. It bores clear through it with roots. And if the planet is too small and the baobabs are too many, they split it in pieces. Now, the illustration at the bottom, the green, is an illustration of uh, a planet in which the person was very lazy. So 3 trees covered the whole planet. So it is very important that it has to be cleaned. The baobab has to be plucked and removed every day. So it is a question of discipline. The little prince said to me later on, when you have finished your own toilet in the morning, then it is time to attend to the toilet of your planet. Just so, with the greatest care. You must see to it that you pull up regularly all the baobabs at the very first moment when they can be distinguished from the rose bushes, which they resemble so closely in their earliest youth. It is very tedious work, the little prince added, but very easy. Now, a hint is that a baobab is like these seeds. There are good seeds and there are bad seeds, and both look similar in the beginning, both push through, and if we allow them to grow, they can destroy us fully. Then then the prince is talking about sunsets. Says, I am very fond of sunsets. Come, let us go look at a sunset now. Now here is where the adult and the child is getting conflicted. But we must wait, I said. This is the pilot saying, wait for what? For the sunset, we must wait until it is time. When it is noon in the United States, the sun is setting over France. But if you could fly to France in 1 minute, you could go straight into the sunset right from noon. Unfortunately, France is too far away for that. But on your tiny planet, my little prince, all you need do is move your chair a few steps. You can see the day end and the twilight fail whenever you like. And then the prince says, one day I saw the sunset 44 times. Now, this one is focusing on the matters of consequence, how people give priority to what matters to them. So the dialogue is all about, the prince is talking about he has a flower, and he is worried that the sheep will go and eat the flower, but then they say the flower has got thorns. So why does the flower has thorns? That is where we are coming into in this narrative. Yes, even flowers that have no thorns. The thorns are of no use at all. Flowers have thorns just for spite. So this is a negative connotation to that. At that instant, the narrator is frustrated because he was working with his plane with repairs. But Prince worries about sheep eating flowers. So, like a typical adult, he gets irritated. So he says, don't you see, I'm very busy with matters of consequence. He- So the prince says, you talk just like grown-ups. So one can imagine, a child and a parent talking about the child has their own priorities, but the parent is stuck with whatever. So if someone loves a flower of which just one single blossom grows in all the millions and millions of stars, it is enough to make him happy just to look at the stars. So the stars will reflect the flower. He can say to himself, somewhere my flower is there. But if the sheep eats the flower, in one moment all his stars will be darkened. And you think that is not important. So now, of course, when you read this book, I do not want to spoil it, so I've only picked up here and there so that the interest of the people are there that they must read this book again and again. I must also put it into context that I first came across this book. It was introduced to me by my wife, Marina, in 1988 when we got engaged. This was among the two books that was introduced to me by her. One was this, and the other one was equally prolific. That was uh, The Prophet by Khalil Gibran. It's another fantastic book. Anyway, so here, so in this chapter, the prince is talking about the flower which is got on his planet, and then the flower is talking to the prince that I have got my own mechanism to fight against the. So I'm not at all afraid of tigers, but I have a horror of drafts. Drafts means the wind. So I suppose you wouldn't have a screen for me. He's telling to the prince. The flower is talking to the prince. So the prince says a horror of drafts, that is bad luck for a plant. At night, I want you to put me under a glass globe because it is very cold where you live. The fact is that I did not know how to understand anything. I ought to have judged by deeds and not by words. Now, mind you, this is not a continuous text. I picked up from here and there because I had to prioritize what words have to come in. But the whole thing will start making very good sense only when you read the text fully. So, so this is the prince talking about the flower that she cast her fragrance and her radiance over me. I ought never to have run away from her. Now, as you go through the book, you will find that, this flower and all these are very, very symbolic, and they talk about love. It will come through. So now here is the key word that love requires care and responsibility. You become responsible forever for what you have tamed. So what? Okay. Then next they talk about the volcanoes which are on the prince's planet. He has got three volcanoes. So the prince is talking about says that when I have to leave on the morning of his departure from the planet, he puts his planet in perfect order. He carefully cleaned out his active volcanoes. He possessed two active volcanoes, and they were very convenient for heating his breakfast. He also had one volcano that was extinct. But as he said, one never knows. So he cleaned out the extinct volcano too. If they are well cleaned out, volcanoes burn slowly and steadily without any eruptions, and they can be useful. Volcanic eruptions are like fires in a chimney. So here they're talking about volcanoes which can be dangerous as well as useful if we tend to them properly. Then the next is talking about the flower is talking about the animals on that planet. But the animals, the flowers replies saying that so here it is the prince is telling the flower that should I not provide some safety for you from the animals? So the flower replies saying, well, I must endure the presence of two or three caterpillars if I wish to become acquainted with the butterflies. So there is no gain without pain. It seems that they are very beautiful, and if not the butterflies and the caterpillars, who will call upon me? You will be far away. Here is another profound sentence. It says, I ought to have judged her by her acts, not her words. Now, after this, the both of them are visiting different planets. Now, symbolically, these planets are identifying different characteristics. We will go through, and they have identified the names of the planets too, but that's not very important here. So, the first planet, asteroid, where they go, is inhabited by a king, and the king has no subjects. So the king welcomes the prince, and then he says, "Okay, now I've got a subject." So the prince says that, "But how do you know that I am a subject?" He says, "Yeah, but I don't have anybody else, so you must be a subject." So there is a dialogue happening there. So this, so he says, "If you are the king, then why don't you show me a sunset? You command it, and I should be able to see a sunset because I love a sunset." So the king replies, "You shall have your sunset. I shall command it, but according to my science of government, I shall wait until conditions are favorable." So the boy asks, "When will that be?" The king consults a bulky almanac and says, "That will be that will be this evening about 20 minutes to 8, and you will see how well I am obeyed." So here actually what is happening? The king is acting like a king, but he has no subject, so he has no control, but he wants to show control. So even sunset will happen at whatever time, but he says this is happening because of me. Then the boy is very frustrated. He says, "No, no, it doesn't work like me, so I want to go away." So when he wants to return, it says the king says, "Do not go. I will make you a minister." "Minister of what?" asked the boy. "Minister of justice." "But there is nobody here to judge." So the king says, "If you succeed in judging yourself rightly, then you are indeed a man of true wisdom." This is where the punch is. So the king is a symbol of authority and power, but ruling without any purpose. And the punchline is, it is way more difficult to judge oneself than to judge others. Next, they visit another planet on which there is a very uh, conceited person. So he is all of himself. He is always looking at himself, and again he is alone there. So so then this dialogue is, "Do you really admire me very much?" he demanded of the little prince. "What does that mean, admire?" asked the prince. "To admire means that you regard me as the handsomest, the best dressed, the richest, and the most intelligent man on this planet. But you are the only man on your planet." Says, "Yes, but then do me this kindness, admire me just the same." So a conceited man who only wants to be the most admired person on his otherwise uninhabited. He is in his own mind, in his own planet. Next, they meet a drunkard, and he is drinking. Replied the tippler with a uh, lugubrious air. "What are you? Why are you drinking?" demanded the little prince. "So that I may forget," replied the tippler. "Forget what?" inquired the little prince, who already was sorry for him. "Forget that I am ashamed," the tippler confessed, hanging his head. "Ashamed of what?" insisted the little prince, who wanted to help him. "Ashamed of drinking." Here they're talking about escapism and addiction. So they're stuck in that cycle. Next, they encounter a businessman on who is very busy. When the prince walks in, he doesn't even have time to look up and greet them. He's busy calculating. And so then there's a dialogue about, "What do you do?" And he says, "Oh, I collect stars. I buy stars." So here it continues. "What do you do with these stars?" "What do I do with them?" "Yes, nothing. I own them." "You own the stars?" "Yes. But I have already seen a king who, I mean, who has no power." So kings do not own, they reign over. It is a very different matter. "And what good does it do you to own the stars?" "It does me the good of making me rich." "And what good does it do you to be rich?" "It makes it possible for me to buy more stars if any are discovered." So, so this man is all for the stars, but he can't enjoy the stars. He's just, so this is very, I think many of us can relate to this very easily. Then next they go to a lamplighter. It's a very small planet
वो प्रीवियस
and
वो इसका पंच लाइन रह गया.
planet. Okay. So, so the punchline is that this businessman is blind to the beauty of the stars and instead endlessly trying to own them all. Thanks. Yeah. Yeah. Next, they encounter a lamplighter. So he is on this planet. It's a very small planet. So as he goes in, he can see that the guy is switching on and switching off the lamp. So he says, "Good morning. Why have you just put out your lamp?" So those are the orders, replied the lamplighter. Good morning again. What are the orders? The orders are that I put out my lamp. Good evening. So his job is, morning and evening. Evening he has to switch on the lamp, and morning he'll switch it off. And he lighted his lamp again. But why have you just lighted it again? Those are the orders, replied the lamplighter. I do not understand, said the little prince. There is nothing to understand, said the lamplighter. Orders are orders. Good morning. And he put out the lamp again. So this guy is a very hard-working person, and he is very, very judiciously doing whatever he has been told, except that maybe he doesn't understand the purpose of that. Next, they meet a geographer, and the geographer is busy writing in his big book. Uh, he does a lot of research and writes. So then the prince asked him about, how many mountains do you have, how many oceans do you have, how many rivulets do you have, and so on and so forth. And the geographer says, I don't know anything of that. And he also asked him, have you seen him? He says, no. So he says, why? Because, but I am not an explorer. I haven't a single explorer on my planet. It is not the geographer who goes out to count the towns, the rivers, the mountains, the seas, the oceans, and the desert. The geographer is much too important to go loafing about. He does not leave his desk, but he receives the explorers in his study. He asks them questions and he notes down what they recall of their travels. And if the recollections of any one among them seem interesting to him, the geographer orders an inquiry into that explorer's moral character. Now, here in the story, he talks about, why? Why does he want to inquire? He says, sometimes the explorer could be drunk and he will make false claims. So I have to ensure that, those false claims are not recorded. Then now they're talking about the earth, and the earth has got all these kind of people which we talked about, and then he's making a very interesting thing about the before the invention of electricity, over 6 continents, a veritable army of lamplighters were employed. First, the lamplighter of New Zealand and Australia would light and go off to sleep. Uh, oh, sorry. Yeah, there's a mix-up. Okay. So first, the lamplighter of New Zealand and Australia would light and go off to sleep. Next, it will go into the other continents like China and India and all those places, and uh, so it will be like a relay across the world, and in a very very rhythmic way. No mistake in their sequence. Only the man in the North Pole and his colleague in the South Pole would be less hassled because they will be busy only twice a year. But otherwise, people are just busy with their routine. That's where this is coming from. Now, this is a very, very important character in the story. So as they are walking, they encounter a snake in the desert. The yellow snake is talking about that, that I am more powerful than the finger. Because the boy says that, how can you be powerful? You are just a size of a finger. But he says, what? I am more powerful than the finger of a king, said the snake. You are not very powerful. You haven't even any feet. You cannot even travel. So the snake says, I can carry you farther than any ship could take you, said the snake. He twined himself around the little prince's ankle like a golden bracelet. Whomever I touch, I send back to the earth from whence he came. But you are innocent and true. He's talking about the boy. And you come from a star. So I will not do that to you. I can help you someday. If you grow too homesick for your own planet, I can help you. Now, the punchline is that whoever I touch, I send back to the earth from which he came, going back to the roots. Next, they go into another planet where there are just there's one flower with three petals. And they meet this one flower. It was a flower with three petals, a flower of no consequence at all. Good morning, said the little prince. Where are the men? The little prince asked politely. The flower had once seen a caravan passing. Men, she echoed. I think there are 6 or 7 of them in existence. I saw them several years ago, but no one never knows where to find them. The wind blows them away. They have no roots, and that makes their life very difficult. So the punch is men have no roots, they keep wandering. So even a flower which is very inconsequential, uh, it is more important than a person without any rooting. Then the prince goes up on a mountain. And from a mountain as high as this one, he said to himself, I shall be able to see the whole planet at one glance and all the people. But he saw nothing save peaks of rock that were sharpened like needles. Good morning, he said courteously. Good morning, good morning, good morning, answered the echo. Who are you? Said the little prince. Who are you? Who are you? Who are you? Answered the echo. Be my friends. I am all alone, he said. I am all alone, all alone, all alone, answered the echo. So the punch is that people just repeat what they mostly without understanding. They they can only men have no imagination. Only children have the imagination. Without imagination, you cannot see. Uh, in the next chapter, they come to a garden. So he was standing before a garden, all abloom with roses. Little prince gazed at them. They all looked like his flower. Now remember, on his planet, he had just one flower, and he was looking at that flower from the time it is growing, and then the flower dresses up herself and shows blooms up and all that. And it also tells the prince to give it breakfast, so he goes and waters it, and all that story is there. So this is now, he sees that there are a lot of flowers in this garden exactly like the one he had. He had only one. His flower had told him that she was the only one of her kind in all the universe. And here were 5,000 of them, all alike, in one single garden. So he thinks to himself, she would be very much annoyed if she should see that, and she would pretend that she was dying to avoid being laughed at. Then he went on with his reflections. I thought that I was rich with a flower that was unique in all the world, and all I had was a common rose, and three volcanoes that came up to my knees. That doesn't make me a very great prince. So the punch again here is that he always thought that what he had was very unique. Next, he encounters a fox. Now, here I am not using the uh, text verbatim. I put in because it is quite large, long, and it would not make sense if it is broken up. So here the fox is telling the prince that so the prince wants to be friends with the fox, but the fox says, no, first you have to tame me. And the prince says, what does it mean to be tamed? So he says, so the fox desired to be tamed and taught the prince how to tame him. By being tamed, something goes from being ordinary or commonplace to being special and unique. That is, that what we tame, we are responsible forever. From the fox, the prince learns that his rose was indeed special because she was the object of the prince's love and time. He had tamed her. Now she was more precious than all the other roses. Upon their departure, the fox says that important things can only be seen with the heart, not the eyes. So one sees clearly only with the heart. What is essential is invisible to the eye. Next, they meet a railway switchman. Now he's constantly changing the track. The one train is coming this way, the other train is going back, and when they're seeing from outside, it all looks the same to the prince. So the prince is asking the switchman, what we call as the linesman. So they're asking, are you pursuing the first travelers? Says no, there's no pursuing at all. They're just going back and forth, and most of the people, they are asleep in there, or if they are not sleeping, they are yawning. Only the children are flattening their noses against the window panes. Only the children know what they are looking for. So only the children are curious. So they are looking outside, and they get their reward. Men are the adults are all busy with their own. Next, they meet a sales clerk. So why he's selling some pills. This is why are you selling those? Asked the little prince. Because they save a tremendous amount of time, said the merchant. Computations have been made by experts. With these pills, you save 53 minutes in every week. And what do I do with those 53 minutes? Anything you like. As for me, said the little prince to himself, if I had 53 minutes to spend as I liked, I should walk at my leisure toward a spring of fresh water. Now it is about 8 days. So they walking around. So the narrator and the prince are dying of thirst. Their water stock is getting over. The prince becomes morose and longs to return home and see his flower. Although losing hope, the prince insists that somewhere in the desert there is a well, urging the narrator to continue. And at dawn, the narrator finds the well, saving them. What makes the desert beautiful is that somewhere it hides a well. I was carrying the sleeping prince and walking. Looking at his face, what I see here is nothing but a shell. So here again it comes back to what is most important is invisible. And it also says that water may also be good for the heart. Now, here is a little explanation on the whole well thing. It is a very comprehensive chapter. So they find the water, and the water tastes very well because of the effort they had put in. And the well is very ready. Everything is ready for use. The pulley, the bucket, the rope. This water was indeed a different thing from an ordinary nourishment. Its sweetness was born of the walk under the stars, the song of the pulley, the effort of my arms. It was good for the heart like a present. Men where you live raise 5,000 roses in the same garden, and they do not find in it what they are looking for. It could easily be found in a single rose or in a little water. But the eyes are blind. One must look with heart. Then they are moving to the towards the penultimate chapters. The prince reminds the narrator that his plane must still be fixed, leaving him there until the work is done. Upon successfully repairing the plane and returning to the prince, the narrator finds the prince talking to the snake, discussing his return home and his desire to see his rose again, worrying that she has been left to fend for herself. So, and here there is a lot of dialogue between the snake and the prince, and the narrator, the pilot, doesn't want the prince to go away, but the prince wants to go away. So there they're talking about all men have stars, but they are not the same. For travelers, they are guides. For others, they are no more than little lights in the sky. For scholars, they are problems. For businessmen, they are wealth. Yet you alone will have the stars like no one has, and I will be living on one of them. This is a dialogue by the prince to the narrator, to the aviator. Now, so then what happens is that the snake, the prince allows the snake to bite him, and the prince is dead. Dead or not is not so. I'm using the wrong word, but then the prince is not to be seen. So, so the next morning when the narrator comes, he cannot find the prince's body. He, having managed to repair his airplane, he leaves the desert. Now here, 6 years later, he is talking about that. He's telling the reader that, look up at the sky, ask yourself, has the sheep eaten the rose? Because the rose was very, very critical for the prince, and then the whole life cycle it represents. Now, this is my interpretation, a small part of it, all about the book, that they're talking about, imagination versus adult obsession. Adults chase numbers, possessions, and matters of consequence, while children see with wonder. Only grown-ups were once children, but only few of them remember it. Love and responsibility. Caring for the rose teaches that love requires time, patience, and responsibility. You become responsible forever for what you have learned, tamed. True value is invisible. The fox shows that what matters most cannot be seen, only felt. One sees clearly only with the heart. What is essential is invisible to the eye. Loss and memory. The prince's farewell reminds us that grief and love endure beyond presence. It is such a mysterious place, the land of tears. Another fun fact is that uh, much later, this pilot, Antoine de Saint-Exupéry, disappeared. He was on a mission over Mediterranean Sea, and he disappeared. The wreckage was found much later, but then nobody knows what happened to him. Thank you very much. As I found that interesting that it is already there in Marathi. So all of you would like to read in Marathi also is available. Thank you very much.
No, it's okay because we got the idea, we got a feeling. So
Yeah.
if at all, yeah. So if at
Yeah,
all,
so the also that I didn't want the whole story to be understood fully, because that mystery has to be there, that it should uh, lead us to pick up the book and read it and understand it again and again.
right, right. And every time your interpretation may change because
Yes,
if you read it once, first time, and if you read it
absolutely.
again, and again, if you read it at age of 20 and if you read it at age 60, your interpretation will be different. It's
Very
a
much.
dynamic book, I can say. Yeah, you
Absolutely.
can.
Provoking book and touching the basic emotions of the human being, and
Correct.
the very conflict going on between the minds of the people of
Yeah,
various nature, various and at various stages of life. So it is really a basic, touching basic emotions. Really
correct.
different and nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sir, I think you took us through this journey very well. Uh,
Uh-huh.
it was highly philosophical, uh, unfolding everything one by one. And I would note certain instances like seeing the sunset 44 times in a day.
Uh-huh.
So
Yeah.
that was something which is unheard of and beyond our imagination.
Correct.
Then, person trying to buy stars, and
Mm.
I should not name it, but Starlink promoter is
Uh.
amongst one of them. He is trying to do exactly that. But I don't know, Tesla and Starlink and everything. So he
Yeah.
seems to be, I could correlate uh, Elon Musk with that,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Correct.
These kind of things, then learn to enjoy your life. The
Yes.
businessman counts only the EBIT, earning
Mm. Mm.
rather net profit,
Yeah. Yeah.
and forgets to have a leisure holidays or spending time with the family.
Yeah.
That he forgets.
Yeah.
So learning to live with your life and remembering that you are a part of this planet. So you will you will perish one day. You will go back to where you are.
Mm.
And one of the things which I feel, how certain movies like Interstellar or The Martian would have come up is
Mm.
from philosophies like this.
Correct.
Because if you have seen The Martian, the
Mm.
person gets stuck on the Mars and how he lives his life, waiting for a signal to come from the Earth. I could relate it with that aviator who was stuck in Sahara Desert
Mm. Mm. Mm.
and the knowledge he gains through his journey while he repairs his aircraft.
Correct.
It was
Correct.
lovely, a nice presentation, and you put it very, the bullet points were too good. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. And so I just want to add one more thing, while you were talking about this, how this book becomes very fundamental and people can relate to it. In fact, Stephen Covey, in one of his books, he talks about that very fundamental topics, they are useful throughout decades.
Yeah.
So, so,
Yes.
and that is why I think the book is so small, but it covers so much. Rather than being very graphic about each and every topic, he's gone to the nectar of that.
It makes you think.
Yeah, it makes one think. Yes. And so
आणि
this
एक
is why
एक
the book is better than the movie, because you can imagine for yourself what it is.
Yeah, yeah, I could put myself on the scenario that if you're stuck like this,
Yeah.
because in you have been in JK files and so has been Shubhanan. So you must have come across these kind of exercises in the management
yeah,
courses that you're stuck on the planet and how do you do and how do you
Yeah,
come
yeah,
out of it?
yeah. Correct.
पुस्तकामध्ये इफ आय गो म्हणजे मी मराठीत सांगायचं म्हटलं तर की ते तुम्ही अनलेस तुम्ही एक मूल झाल्याशिवाय एक लहान मुलासारखं बघितल्याशिवाय तुम्हाला जी म्हणजे एकदा माणूस खूप मोठा व्हायला झाला की त्याला त्या गोष्टी वेगळ्या वाटतात. ते जो मूल बघतो ते कुतूहल असतं, त्यातनं ज्या नवीन गोष्टी कळतात आणि जे ऑब्व्हियस वाटतं त्याला, जे मोठ्या ग्रोनअप माणसाला कळतही नाही की असं त्याच्यामध्ये असू शकेल. आणि त्यामुळे त्या पुस्तके वाचताना पुन्हा पुन्हा विचार करावा लागेल. आपण जसं म्हणतो तो ऍडल्टचा विचार, लहान मूल कसा विचार करत असेल आणि एक बंचुके माणूस काय विचार करू शकेल, लाईक
हम्म.
दॅट त्या पुस्तकाकडे. इट्स अ फिलॉसॉफिकली बुक अँड इट कीप्स ऑन. म्हणजे तुम्ही जेवढे वेळा वाचाल तेवढे वेळा यू हॅव टू थिंक फॉर इट. असं मला तरी ते पुस्तकाचा
And every time your perspective will change.
Correct.
या दॅट्स व्हॉट आय
Correct.
थिंक. या
मला ते आवडलं की ग्रोनअप्स लुक आफ्टर द नंबर्स अँड कॉन्सिक्वेन्सेस व्हॉट एव्हर दॅट टर्म इज
Matter of consequence.
that really I can resonate with.
Yeah,
And the children look with their heart.
correct.
And
आणि
I
ते
like
You better do that so that your child can ask you questions.
Yeah, yeah. So actually, so I just want to repeat that, I use the word childlike, not childish.
चाइल्ड
So that's something which we will have to go back. We have to unlearn being an adult.
आणि ते जे झाड दाखवलं ना तू, ते उलट झाड असतं आणि त्याचं ते मुळं, तर माहित नाही मला, पण भगवद्गीतेमध्ये आपलं ऊर्ध्व मूल त्याचं अशी ती पूर्ण त्याच्यावरती एक चॅप्टर आहे की हे जग कसं आहे आणि त्याचं त्या वर्णन केलेलं आहे. आय थिंक 13वा अध्याय. तर त्याच्यामध्ये ते जग कसं, आणि त्याच्यावरती ज्ञानेश्वरीमध्ये प्रचंड ओव्या आहेत सगळ्या तेवढ्या हे करणाऱ्या, की हे जग कसं आहे तर पूर्ण उलट आहे, याची मुळं वरती गेलेली आहेत. आणि ते जे कन्सेप्ट आहे सांगितलेली, तर मला आता ते बघताना वाटलं की रिअली जगामध्ये असं दाखवलंय, म्हणजे झाड आहे की ज्याचं त्याची वरती गेलेली मुळं वाटतात आणि ते खाली आहे ते झाड वाटतं असं. तर आपले संत लोक सुद्धा ते व्हिज्युअलाइज करायचे काहीतरी त्या काळामध्ये 700-800 वर्षापूर्वी. माहित आहे नॉट अबाउट इट, माहित नाही, पण ते मला ते बघितल्यानंतर वाटलं की शेवटी ते त्याचा अर्थ तिकडे जो त्यांनी सांगितला, अर्थात त्याच्यामध्ये त्यांनी अर्थ वेगळ्या अर्थाने सांगितले, पण असं उलट असलेलं झाड ही कन्सेप्ट आहे.
The beauty of the book is that it is written like a dialogue between that little prince and so many different characters like Snake and the drunkard and the businessman and whatnot. So it is really going through the worlds of different people, different professions, and at the same time it was really written in a very simplistic way.
Very simple.
So no wonder that it touched many hearts and it is still touching
so many languages.
Yeah. कोणाला काय विचारायचं असल्यास, काही फीडबॅक द्यायचा असल्यास, इट्स ओपन.
आय थिंक त्यांनी खूप छान प्रकारे एक्सप्लेन केलं विथ प्रेझेंटेशन, आणि त्यामुळे मला वाटत नाही की लँग्वेजचा काही बॅरियर याच्यामध्ये आला असेल, कारण प्रेझेंटेशन वॉज ऑल्सो व्हेरी ब्युटिफुल अँड यू एक्सप्लेन इट व्हेरी वेल. श्रीकांतजींनी ऑलरेडी समअप केलं होतं की काय काय त्याच्यामध्ये वेगवेगळ्या थीम्स होत्या आणि प्रोफाउंड्स त्याच्यामध्ये होते. मला आवडलेले म्हणजे एकतर यू कॅन सी द थिंग्स क्लिअरली विथ युअर हार्ट. That was a very beautiful sentence, because whatever you do, if you do it from your heart, it will always give you the good benefits.
Correct.
So that is what I see in that. And second one, as already we are discussing, that grown-ups look after the figures, and then the men don't have imagination. The children have imagination. They don't have to look at the numbers or anything. They have their own world. And that's why I like children, because even if you are at this age, means now I am at 50 and Shubhananji, you must be around 65, 70. But if you read still the books of little children, it will keep the child alive in your heart. I think this should be the learnings from this book also.
Yeah.
Thank you very much to you. You explained it very well, and we got a new book. Unfortunately, nobody was knowing about this book. That I am also surprised that this such a wonderful book, which is bestseller and top 3 in the world. At least somebody should have idea about this book. But thank you for choosing this book and bringing in front of us. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
So on behalf of Rasik Vachak, we really thank you that you took your precious time and presented this book, this altogether different book that we had no one from us had read it. So again, thank you from bottom of our hearts.